Hi. So today I'm going to be looking at my presentation for Dead by Daylight and how I'm aiming to currently redesign its UI. So I'm going to talk about the problem. So there are a few problems with the UI from my understanding. The main ones I'm going to point out are currently that from looking at the top right, the use of buttons is quite inconsistent. You can see the very small ones that are hard to see on the bottom, acting almost as navigation buttons when they don't really serve that purpose. Compared to the buttons on the far left on the sidebar, they kind of serve the same functionality, but they're separated, which from a user I couldn't really understand. Additionally, if you look at the inventory there, you can see the use of perks. Now, these are good in terms of a visual aesthetic, but coming in terms of functionality, this is actually very hindering towards all levels of players, not even new ones. Because whenever a player is trying to look through all those perks, they're going to be looking for something set. They're going to try and find something that immediately stands out to them. And going through, currently there are 8 perks, perk pages there. It's quite hard to find what you're looking for exactly. And that leads me to the bottom right image. The use of a sorting system you can see there is actually quite unnecessary. But what my aim is to actually bring us into all sorts of sorting systems or all sorts of menus in the game, which I'll show a bit more in my low fidelity wireframes. So for my research, I actually looked into a few laws of UX. My main ones were Hicks law, the aesthetic usability effect, and the law of proximity. These were mainly, for the examples I talked about before. The use of aesthetic usability is mainly showing how the perks being shown are inconsistent because they're not really serving a functional purpose. And the law of proximity talking about how those menus were laid out a wee bit inconsistently and just didn't really work well in terms of user functionality. It doesn't actually show it there, but I've mentioned it briefly. I looked at some online sales research, mainly looking at some studies about how people saw the use of filtering options and sorting options, which I did mention, and how they can actually be used to actually enhance the user experience while they're going through shopping. On the far right there, you can actually see some of the citations I did for my research document. Yep, so I will move on to some more research I did. Now, this is quite minor, but I thought I'd touch on it at least. Basically, I did some personal user research while I was developing my scams and my low fidelity. And the aim for those were basically I was showing new players and old players, basically a different range of them, UI, trying to see what their thoughts on it were, and trying to see where they would want improvement. Now, this works mainly because I'm trying to make a universally accessible piece of UI. So, for example, I want new players to have the same sort of experience with it as veteran players. So it basically works the same for everyone. And basically, I try to get people to give me their own inputs on issues they might have, just so it makes it a wee bit easier for me to implement as much as I can. So here are some of the game references that I used, the main ones being Friday the 13th and Blood Harvest from Death Garden. Now, the main reason was because they do quite a good job of showing perks. The only issue with these are they have quite a small handful. But taking how they display theirs, it's hard to see there, but basically in the perks one for Friday the 13th, they have a giant drop down bar. I couldn't get a good enough image, so I'm just going to give a brief explanation on it. Basically, they had a small drop down bar showing all of the perks, alongside an immediate drop down to information about that spread all the way down above the screen, which was immediately eye-catching to the player. And I want to try and recreate something like that. And the use of Tarkov there mainly was because I was following the idea of a preset system, because I haven't really had any experience with some, so I'm just trying to get some idea of how they would work, which once again I'll be able to show through my low fidelity wireframes. So just a wee bit of brief information, I looked at post-it note investigations. Now I actually overlaid the post-its on top of my buttons in-game, just so I could figure out all of the menus that I would need to recreate. And this is a good lead into my flow diagrams, because through using those post-it notes, I could find all these menus you can see on the top there, find out where they're a wee bit unnecessary. For example, if you look at the bottom list of flow diagrams, I tried to confine stuff like friends and daily rituals into archives, which is more based on lore, where daily rituals would fit, and settings into friends because there's really no need to have a separate friend tab. It just fills up space on the main screen, which could be a wee bit unnecessary. And then here's a brief look at my scamps. Now I tried to look at different UI examples or UX examples and try and iterate on all of them so I could go into my low fidelity with the most examples I can. to get the best ideas and concepts in there, which leads me into low fidelity. Now I'm just going to quickly exit out of this presentation, but what I will show is basically how these designs iterated through the feedback I got from users. Just showing the idea of having more like detailed designs and a more eye-catching experience. So yep, I'm going to tab out and I'm going to bring this across. Now if I immediately go back to the first character, going down to loadout, you can see whenever I click on these buttons and go into filter, it lets me filter through a few options that players would most likely want. And then also going through different sorts of rarities. Now it's not, I can't get it show up here, but basically I did stuff like alphabetical, rarity, item type, recently used, and favorited. And then if I go into presets, you can see the sort of preset list I've done there based off Tarkov, and showing all the items that would be based on a preset. And then I'm briefly going to look at my cosmetics just to show that as well. But it does follow the same sort of premise of having a menu with everything on top of it. For example, the head, you have all your items there. You can also filter, retro. Also just having access to the other body pieces just make it less clicks, like going back and forth 3 screens. Once again, if I click out here, there is also a preset tab for the cosmetics. In my high fidelity wireframes, I aim to actually improve upon this and get more characters in for both killers and survivors, and increase will make the icons and all look a lot better. And to finish it off, just to show it there, I'm also going to show a bit of my portfolio, which I'll open now. So basically, all I have on here currently is the UX redesign page. If I click into this, now I don't have the final prototype. Oh, it's going to go down immediately down. Oh, come on. But yeah, basically I'm talking about the aim of the project, challenges, everything I aim to cover, the tools I'm using. I'm delving into Illustrator now, that's why I've just mentioned it there. My Miro board, and a wee bit of the design and research I've talked about during this presentation. Also my user personas and what I'm trying to aim to work upon. Yep, so most of this has covered what I've just talked about there, and I've got a few prototypes on the... Well, I've got all my prototypes on there to show the difference in design and iteration. But yep, that is my presentation there. Apologies for the waffle, but that is me there. Thank you for listening.